meant at all racist or anything, but I might have known that was a Canadian film because there seems to be something about issues of sexuality, whether it's Robert Lepage's films, Vincent Vitali, David Cronenberg, where there seems to be a lot more kind of almost psychological self-examination of the Canadian psyche and therefore by extension mankind's psyche. I mean, have you noticed that in your own country's filmmaking?
Yeah, we're like really polite but secretly fucked up. And it comes out in Cronenberg's films or in Vincenzo's films, as you mentioned. But I'm a big Cronenberg fan, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know why that is. Brandon Cronenberg's making films now, and it's just as fucked up as anyone else. Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with us. I don't know. I literally watched this film and I'm like, what is wrong with me?
Although conversely, it is weird that you are Canadian because one might think that in terms of having kind of national guilt, it might be an American who would make a film that deals with Guantanamo Bay.
Well, I didn't want to make a political movie. Like, I honestly.
Well, I think you did.
Well, I honestly wanted to know what those tortures were like, not as a like, let's show people how bad they are. I literally was like, how bad are they? I really wanted to know what it was like to be waterboarded and what it was like to have sleep deprivation and stuff like that. Just because I wanted to know for my own, what it would do to my own psyche. What was interesting was that being the torturer was the most disturbing part of it. That being the torturer did worse things to me than being the torturee. So that was an interesting. That was kind of the big discovery for me, was that like not only do I really like to torture people apparently, but I'm kind of torturing everyone. Like I'm torturing the people I'm working with. I'm torturing my boyfriend. Like I'm kind of just a torturer.
Well, so you're. I mean, how much of that was real? Because what you've just said implies that you want us to think that you're telling the truth.
We set out to make a fiction film where we would actually torture ourselves. But then a couple things happened. We discovered that the behind the scenes was kind of as interesting as what was going on in there. So we hired an actress, Marguerite Moreau, to basically reenact the concerns of my producers, who didn't want to be on camera. So the stuff with Marguerite is definitely not real, but is like, I've been calling it a real-time reenactment of itself. So it's like, my producers are like, this is totally insane. And then we could be Marguerite and be like, okay, this is what they think. So, now let's have that discussion again on camera. But the stuff with Dave, we actually did the tortures for real. Like, for example, I thought he would be ticklish. I thought there's this great excerpt from a novel about the concentration camps in which a Jewish man is tickled with a goose feather naked in front of a bunch of pretty women, and he laughs and laughs and laughs until he cries. And I was like, I wanted tortures that were like, weird, and I thought I could do it, and it turns out Dave's not. He actually isn't ticklish at all, like at all.
Did you try like the bottom of the
I tried that's a very condensed version of what actually went on. And my producers were like, "You idiot! Like we got all like it was, it's a small budget movie. To get 5 women on set at once and to do this scene with all these cameras was a big deal, and it was a total failure. And it was supposed to be this exciting scene, and it was actually supposed to happen at a different point, but." So that was a big
failure itself is interesting, though.
The failure is interesting, but what really became interesting was that the scene where I kissed Dave literally was a reaction to this tickling thing not working, and I was like, Dave, you call me a faggot, and I'm gonna get really angry, and it's gonna be really exciting. And it didn't work at all. It seemed really fake, and my producers were like, this isn't real. And so the movie took a real turn there, where it became more about trying to get some honesty out of Dave and myself. Through torture, and Dave was not on board with that. Like that was not what he had signed up for, and so that was a lot of the interplay between Dave and I was really a blurry line between like, are we doing this? Is this real? Is this not real? Do you hate me? Do you not hate me? Are my parents involved or not? He did for a while.
Okay.
But I'm happy to say he doesn't hate me anymore. He saw the film and he was like, yeah, that's pretty much what happened, and you look like an asshole, which you kind of were, so, good. Right. And then, so some stuff is real and some stuff is fake, and what was interesting was that Dave, who's an actor, like, you could tell him to do anything, and he would do it, and he would do it again, and it was like, because he wanted to be in this movie, there's like this whole reality TV angle where people will make themselves look like an idiot, they will put their lives in peril, if they're an actor who wants to be famous. So that was something that really we kind of pushed to the limit here and in the reality of the making of the film.
So going back a few steps, what was the initial impetus for making this film? Was it because of the rise of reality television? Was it because of the continuing, or not, as the case may be, American presence in Guantanamo?
I've been trying to make a much bigger film for a number of years, and as is often the case, we thought we were going to be able to film it last year, and we lost some money. So we're like, okay, we can't. What can we do instead? And I was like, looking in my idea book, and I had always been fascinated by psychological torture, ever since 9/11 when they started using enhanced interrogation techniques. And I was like, maybe there's something we could do here, like I could torture myself for very little money. And I was like, Dave, the only actor I know who would agree to do this is Dave. And so I told him the idea. I was like, we'll actually torture each other. We'll actually do these things and just see what happens and see what it's like. And maybe we'll have to dramatize it a bit or something. I don't know, but we'll create like a bit of a reality TV thing, and we'll just see what happens. And so that's where it started. And then I was like, we'll see what happens. And then as we were shooting, it became sort of something different and a lot more personal than either of us was expecting. But really, it was just we wanted to go on an adventure. We wanted to make a film, and we had very limited resources. So we put a lot of effort into making that one location as interesting as we could.
Yeah, definitely. What kind of audiences have you shown this to so far? Because it's interesting that you showed it at a science fiction festival, because it isn't actually a science fiction film.
No.
I mean, I really enjoyed it, and it does flirt with some of the iconography of sci-fi, but it's not. While I imagine if you showed it to an average American audience, again, this may be me having a lower expectation of them, as you might expect, but I saw, for example, I saw, for example, Boys Don't Cry in a cinema next to NYU, which, for people who haven't seen it, is based on a true story about a transgender lesbian who was murdered by rednecks. And watching this film in a supposedly liberal part of New York, surrounded possibly by students, there were people laughing at the torture scenes, and I felt uncomfortable being in that audience.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering, have you had audiences who watch that and actually they don't like the gay aspect of it, or they don't like this or that?
Well, this is really the first audience that's seen it. People have been really turned off by the film. We've submitted to some other festivals, and it gets really varied reactions. Some people love it, and some people are angry and they corner me. We've done a number of test screenings, and we did some industry screenings in Toronto to try to get distribution and stuff. And distributors are like, "What? No, what? No, you can't sell that." So we kind of made this weird, monstrous thing that some people like and some people really, really hate. And some people have some moral reasons why they think the film is bad, and they're not wrong. It's an irresponsible film. I got his consent. I mean, I told him I was going to torture him, but when I actually started torturing him, he was like, "Oh my God, you're actually torturing me!" And we lost Dave. Early on in the shoot, he was antagonistic against us, and so it was irresponsible, and I can see why it makes some people uncomfortable. But that was the plan all along, and I'm sure that some audiences will find the gay aspects of it uncomfortable. Louis talked about Her Suit, which was the time travel film I made, and it involves me going back in time and trying to sleep with myself. And some audiences were really offended by that when I was showing that film a few years ago. In fact, I almost got arrested showing it to a high school in America. But that's another story. But no, I'm excited to see how people react to it. I don't know. Maybe we'll find out once we open the floor up.
Because thinking of movies that deal with issues of torture, that deal with gay identity, maybe it wouldn't be an ideal double bill, because afterwards you might want to kill yourself, but I thought it would be interesting to watch this on a double bill with Bent. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, I haven't seen it.
It's this film about the gay experience in the concentration camps with Clive Owen.
Right.
And again, it's a I don't know if they start off as a couple, but a gay couple kind of emerge maybe only because of their shared torture experience in the camps, and then they get tortured and have to watch each other being tortured.
Sounds great.
Yeah, but it seems, thinking of gay persecution on screen, it's something that's much less visible than, say, if you had made much more overtly a political film about racial identity rather than sexual identity.
Yeah, I wanted to think of, my tortures were very inspired by real tortures, like waterboarding, but I wanted to think of novel tortures. It was like, and then that was really one of the emphases for me, is like, what are ways that you can torture someone that don't seem like torture, you know, like kissing him.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, that's not torture, but for a lot of people that is torture. And the queer angle of the film was a surprise also, like that. I didn't know that that was going to come up so much. But I mean, I don't really know what to say about it. It was kind of a strangely personal thing that came out and just kept recurring. And as we were editing it, we kind of just kept finding these moments to put in, and it seemed to be kind of the secret subplot of the movie is my character wrestling with my sexuality and how comfortable I actually am with it. You know, Dave, I was criticizing for not really having an identity, and my identity is all wrapped up in being a gay filmmaker. And you know, if I'm not actually that, then what am I? So that was kind of something that just came out.
So how long did it take to make the film?
We shot for 20 days. And
assuming that the 7 days were in real time, or
no, we pulled the 7 days and made it longer. So Dave was actually in there for longer than 7 days. But it wasn't. He only had to actually live in the box for 7 full days, and then after that we did other stuff that he didn't have to be in the box for, like the interview afterwards and stuff like that. And then my sequence was also like my sequence was done later and it took longer. And as you can see, there's like, you know, we put in camera work that is impossible in a documentary. And so sometimes the tortures, we just did them multiple times. So it was still torture, it was just more torture. Yeah. Like I kissed Dave several times. We did that several times. But that's the fakest part, so that was easy to do several times.
Cool. Does anyone in the audience have any questions? I've got a runner.
Yeah, sorry. No problem. There's one right in the middle here.
Hi. Was Dave the guy who's actually torturing you at the end? Because it was quite ambiguous as to whether he was actually behind the torture scenes. Because he was the one who turned around and said, although he wanted to kill you at one point, he didn't actually want to torture you. Just wanted to know as to whether he was the one or whether it was, I don't know, some other guy.
No, Dave refused to be involved after we let him out. So I tortured myself, basically.
Well, what conclusions, I mean, I know it's ambiguous, but what conclusions do you think people might get from that final scene? Who are we expecting to be the torturer if it's not them?
I mean, to me, it's really important that it is me, that I am willing to torture myself to make a movie that is suitably dramatic for what I'm trying to do. As a director, I realized that like getting some kind of dramatic scene with tears or something was really important to me, and I would kind of just do that at all costs. And it became clear that at a certain point I would just have to torture myself to tears to make the movie work, you know, as much as it does. So it seems very fitting that as a filmmaker, I would go totally crazy. You know, I mean, I was inspired, and you know, I was aware that I could go crazy, and I was thinking a lot about Kubrick. And it was like, you know, what if Kubrick made himself do 99 takes of a scene? What would that be like? So I just thought it was very fitting that it should turn around on me. And also, like, you know, casting yourself in your own film is always obnoxious, and so I always knew that I would want to make myself look as bad as possible. So there's like a lot of me in there, and then I would argue that there's some heightened stuff that I did in the moment that isn't really indicative of what I'm really like.
I was wondering, torture scenes or stress positions were mainly sort of black and white. Was color important to indicate normality, or was it just happen?
I just really like a white palette. Like, if you see my other films. They're also pretty much just all white, and I like to save color for sort of dramatic emphasis moments. So when you see some blood, it has a lot of impact because you've seen such few colors. And with the women as well, I wanted that to be very much, I went through their wardrobes and asked them to wear the most colorful thing that they could, so that was like a little bit of exotic real world coming in. But as a torturer, I think it is important that you give people as little to latch onto that's comforting as possible. So I didn't want the torturers to have any eyes, like I didn't want them to have any humanity that you could possibly get to. And same with the cell, I wanted it to just be totally sterile. But I also wanted it to be kind of beautiful in a sterile way. That was really important to me, that the set looked kind of like an installation piece. And so I worked really closely with a production designer from the States named Lauren Mayer, who does sculpture. And it was her idea to create that pillar in the middle. And that became very kind of central to the film, this sort of like using a modernist installation art to torture someone. That seemed like just an interesting thing to do.
Was there ever a moment where you thought you might be going too far when you were shooting it? Like either with yourself or with Dave? Was there ever a moment as a filmmaker where you thought, I'm more driven to make this film than I am to torture my friend and maybe there's something wrong with me?
Well, I knew that the film was going to beg that question. So it wasn't like I was going to be surprised by have we gone too far. Like we were talking have we gone too far before we even shot anything. We're like, have we gone too far? Well, for example, we had a safety guy who was supposed to oversee the waterboarding, and he quit before we even shot. He's like, whoa. You're actually going to water. I thought you were going to just pretend to waterboard someone, and he quit. And so we were like, are we gone too far? Like, should we not do this? But we knew that the concept was to go too far and see what happens, to be irresponsible and see what happens. But we did have a safety guy, a new safety guy came, and there was no moment where I actually thought somebody was going to die. And I specifically saved the most dangerous stuff for me at the end, and I wanted Dave's torture to be the most playful. And the scariest thing was the very last one, which was the tube, for sure. It was originally supposed to have leeches in it. It was going to go in the tube, and then there would be leeches, and I would freak out. And I got so freaked out immediately that we couldn't even put the leeches in because it was just so. It was so awful. It was so awful. You just can't get out, and there's just like water rushing up, and they had like a safety, like everyone was ready to dive in there and save me. I knew I wasn't going to die, but it was extremely disorienting, and just that was like very near the end of the shoot, of course. And I just pulled the plug, and that was it. We didn't do the rest of what was planned for that.
Sorry, I've got the gist of this in my head, but I'm just going to have to maybe go the wrong way, the long way around. But were you scared at any? I mean, not that you're scared, but are you concerned that maybe this film might end up inspiring copycats to maybe kind of like do what you've done and like take art for art's sake to its logical conclusion, where people might end up getting hurt in the production of their own kind of like film? I mean, you see that with like pranks on YouTube and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to know.
We did discuss that. I don't think so. I think if you watch this, it's not going to be like a film that's going to play at a multiplex near you. Like the only people who are going to see this film are going to be at festivals, and I'm probably going to be there, and we'll do a Q&A, and I'll be like, this is what we did, and this is why it was crazy, and this is why it was safe. And I can't imagine this ever being like a thing that's passed around on YouTube. Like it's kind of it's not an entertaining film per se. So I don't think that anyone who's going to come to this movie is going to be foolhardy, going to be naive enough. Like if you wanted to go home and try this stuff, I'm like, you can do that. And I know, I hope that you don't, but I did, and I think that the people who are going to see this film are going to be old enough and smart enough to make their own decisions. If this was a movie that like was marketed to kids or something, then I would feel uncomfortable. But I don't.
It's just that, like, you might remember. Oh, I don't know if you do. But there was I think it was it was some sort of advert where you had like happy slappers or whatever. They're basically like, you know, slap each other like in the face, and I think that advert was banned because a whole bunch of kids were getting hurt because all these other big bullies would come. I was one of them, by the way. Not that I was a bully, but I got pounded in the face on a couple of occasions. I just wanted to know, like, do you ever think that maybe that would have repercussions on like other people where they might actually end up getting? I mean, it's just a really controversial film, you know, in the wrong hands.
Yeah, well, I hope not. But I would be surprised if that happened. But I know, you know, Kubrick comes up again, A Clockwork Orange, especially here in London, getting banned for so many years because he banned it, and that was interesting. That was him saying maybe I did go too far. Like that was a suggestion that Kubrick himself felt like maybe he'd gone too far, and he was worrying about his own safety in his own town. Could that happen to me? Maybe, and I am concerned that could happen. I hope that it doesn't, but I can't say that I made this film with a foolproof theory of why that would never happen. I didn't. It's like somewhat of a gamble, but I just knew that it was art house enough that it wasn't going to have that. It wasn't going to play as a commercial on TV, for example.
Yeah, I'd argue anything made by Johnny Knoxville is far more dangerous.
Absolutely, exactly. I would be much more concerned about making Jackass than this, for sure.
The whole scene with the kissing scene being played for his parents, and his parents calling and calling and calling, was that real?
Well, we really told Dave that stuff, but his parents did not see that scene and were not involved. And it's interesting that you brought that up. Dave did say, you can't include my family. And I was like, well, I mean, what are the limits of that? Can I mention that you have a family? Can I say that you have a mother and father, like anyone? And he's like, you can say that I have a mother and father, but you can't include them or name them by name. And so that's why we had to blur the phone, because it had his dad's actual name. But we did not actually include them. But we wrote that line, and Dave was upset that we wrote that line as well.
So he believed that his parents had seen him?
I don't think he necessarily fully believed it, because Dave, no, like just as he said, I think obviously I could be making that up. It wouldn't be hard. I did have his phone. It was not hard to reprogram his phone and make it look like his dad is calling. So I think he was skeptical as to whether it was true, but it definitely was not something he was expecting. It was much more personal, and I think Dave thought like the film was going to be more like Saw. You know, it was going to be Saw, and we would actually torture ourselves so that it felt real. And so he was playing it up, and that's I think why we had to kind of change course. That's why some scenes felt fake, because Dave was like, I'm acting even though it's kind of real. And the film kind of became like Saw meets Burden of Dreams, or it's like a documentary version of somebody trying to make this bad Saw film. And so he was skeptical the whole time, but it was mostly just that it took a really personal turn that made him uncomfortable. And then we didn't talk for a while, and we finished the film, and then I showed it to him, and then he liked it, and now we're friends again.
Just with you saying about Dave not being so happy with it at the end, do you think through the first part where you were torturing him, was there ever any doubt, do you think, in his mind that it was only going to go on for a certain length of time? Because obviously it would be really different if he thought you were going to take it further. I mean, with the sort of contract and everything that you guys had signed up, do you think there was ever any doubt that in his mind that you wouldn't stick to it, that you'd take things to more extreme levels? Do you think you felt differently about it because he started to doubt his trust in you as you had more control over the whole situation?
It's too bad that Dave couldn't come, but he said that very early on he was like, oh my god, AJ's a monster. I've known Dave since high school, and he was like, I just thought, how did I not know that I've known AJ for 15 years and I didn't know that he's an evil monster? But Dave is an actor, he's very method, he's very susceptible to suggestion, and it's kind of not surprising that Dave would really take this for real. And so as soon as I spat on his face, like my producers and I were like, what was the moment where we lost him? And we looked through the footage, and it was on the very first day when I spat in his face. You saw, there was actually a close-up shot, which we didn't use, but you see in his face a kind of startled realization that he's actually going to be tortured. And And I don't think he ever felt like he was actually in danger. Like that, what you don't see is that there are tons of people on set. There's like 15 other people on set who aren't in white outfits. There's producers, there's safety people, there's, you know, like we had to go through all the proper things to make this feature film. So if people really needed to, they could have stopped me. And he knew that. But it was more that he realized that I wasn't making the film he thought I was making, and he realized that he's playing himself in a movie that I have kind of complete control over, and that's an extremely vulnerable situation to be in. So it was almost like torture on a very psychological, like this is your whole life, this is your career, everything level. And so I was really nervous after the fact, because I knew he was upset, that he was going to hate the film and that it really would be a disaster. But thankfully he liked the film and is now like showing it to his agents and using it to get other work.
Hi. Yeah, I was just wondering why you opted for the non-doc shooting style and how you think it affected the believability of even the scenes that you're saying actually were real.
Yeah, I guess because the film was micro-budget, because we shot it for $50,000, I wanted to do something different than I had seen micro-budget films do, which most micro-budget films are handheld and it feels really naturalistic. But I kind of regretted it because it doesn't feel as real. Like we could have shot this film. Some of it is handheld and that stuff feels more real. But what's funny is that just when we go handheld does not actually mean, for example, the scene where she wakes me up and he's giving the code, like that's the fakest scene, you know, that's totally staged. We did that after, but it feels realer when you watch it because it's handheld. So to me it's interesting to make a film where you as an audience are starting to realize that things are fake, and I feel like this film challenges you as an audience to judge every single performance. Like, I'm sure all of you were watching Dave when he was talking about Sri Lanka, being like, no, maybe, I don't know. But I feel like you don't watch most movies thinking, is this real? Is this a good performance? Is this a bad performance? And that's interesting. So we've kind of created this film that takes you out a little bit, and you have to decide what is real and what isn't. And that decision that I made to make the film really formal and look good, it's something I still wrestle with as to whether that's the most effective way to tell a story like this and make people think it's real and then turn it around. Because right from the beginning, you're probably saying, wait, how are they dolling around that thing if he's supposedly being tortured? Like, that doesn't make sense. But, you know, we actually were able to keep some doc elements and then go in and shoot coverage. So it was kind of just an interesting experiment, and I'm not sure if it totally worked, but I'm glad we tried.
Did you do any tests beforehand, or you just couldn't guess?
No. We had a bunch of cameras, and based on the time that we had, we'd be like, okay, this one's just going to be handheld, let's just go. And other times we're like, okay, let's get the dolly out, let's cover some of these shots, let's get a close-up of the thing coming out. So like Dave would do his thing, and then after the fact, you could go in and pick up close-ups, and you could get Dave to do the actual acting again, because he would do whatever you told him to do. So to a degree, it would have been really interesting to see the behind the scenes, because it was like, I was actually torturing him, and then be like, okay, Dave, let's just get some close-ups of that. Can you just redo that performance again? That real thing. And so that scene where I make him do it over and over again, that's very accurate to a lot of what you don't see.
Were you trying to prove anything when you said, oh, it's only been 2 days?
I just think that's how long it would take. The ending stuff with me is also the least real stuff. That stuff is like largely staged. Aside from the fact that I actually was tortured in those moments, that sequence is not super real. And I felt like if you actually did that to me, that's how long I would probably last. But I don't know, I thought it was kind of funny.
I'm really sorry, I've just been given a signal by our house manager that we need to finish so that the next show can come in, but hopefully AJ will be happy to
Yeah,
stand
I'll stick
outside
around
and
if you
answer
have
some questions.
questions or
Great. I'm so sorry to cut it
accusations.
short.